Welcome to Richplanet TV. I'm Richard D. Hall. In a previous show I interviewed David McCann and Sharon McKellars, who have written a book called A Madness Shared by Two. Their book is an investigation into events which occurred in 2008 when two Swedish twins, Sabina and Ursula Eriksson, whilst being filmed by a BBC documentary film crew, both seemed to run out in front of M6 motorway traffic in a supposed suicide pact. One of the twins, who was released by the authorities soon after this event, went on to stab and apparently kill Glen Hollinshead at his house in Fenton near Stoke-on-Trent. A documentary about these events was aired in 2010 by the BBC, which caused huge speculation about the reasons behind what happened. Now, I did read out some comments from viewers about the previous interview with Sharon and David on a subsequent show, and to say that David was displeased at me is an understatement, but we've since reconciled that situation and agreed to do a second, more in-depth interview because the book does bring to light a lot of information that isn't widely known about in the public domain, and we're going to talk about that today. So welcome back, David.
Thank you, Richard.
Okay then, now I just want to start by asking you about your blog, because when you first saw the documentary you were massively intrigued by it. You set up a blog because you've uncovered so many holes in the official story, both in the BBC documentary and both in the police investigation and in the trial. And if you read this book, you will realise that there's so much has not been told about this story, and in particular your investigation of the Hollinshead killing there's a lot of information in there that you've got from all kinds of different sources, the people that you've interviewed and police sources, etc.
Coroner's report.
Now let's just focus in on the twins first, and then we'll talk about what happened. These two twins, they're Swedish. Now there is a little bit of background in the book to these two twins, that they're from Sweden and they've also lived in Norway, or they've also spent time in the United States. And you do look at some of their family. One of them, Sabina, the one who allegedly stabbed Hollinshead, has a brother called Bjorn, and he has made statements in the Swedish press. She also has two children and a son called Simon, who's 24. Now, I would say that compared to your investigation of the Hollinshead stabbing, the actual amount of background information that you've got on the twins is patchy. Would you agree with that? That you haven't got a chronology of exactly where they've lived and their lives beforehand?
It's fair to say it's patchy. I mean, you know, I could say it's as good as it's going to get as far as establishing where they were. But you're right, and I say it's in regards to Sabina more so. The twin that's alleged to kill him, I could say that are missing years, because there is a point where, say, from about a 5-year period within the 2000s up to there is Sabina seems to go missing.
So between 2000 and 2006, Sabina's son goes to live in America with her sister Ursula, and you're not sure where Sabina was.
It doesn't seem to be with Sabina, and so something must have happened to her in that time.
Now, in the BBC film, they claim that they travelled from Ireland immediately before their bus journey, which they then got off and went to the motorway. Now, you've tried to trace their connections to Ireland and haven't found any firm, even to confirm whether they were living in Ireland or not. Well, you certainly know they've been in Sweden, Norway and the United States, but the island connection is...
The island connection is dubious. She was obviously... Sabina definitely was in Ireland, and Cork, according to the police, the Garda, who I've spoken to, who were very cautious on what they said to me. They wouldn't answer because they realised they're talking about their British police, see? Because it had been Merseyside police that first contacted the Garda in Ireland. which we're going to get to in a minute. The most amazing thing is that what was significantly said to the Liverpool police by Sabina and her sister was never being mentioned until this, you know, which is a very important thing.
Yeah, and we'll come on to that. And now, in the documentary, as I said, it said that they travelled from Ireland, and still no one seems to know what the function of their journey was. Or again, we'll come on to that. Where they were coming from, where they were going to, and you've tried to find corroborated witnesses of them being on the ferry coming from Dublin, and you've drawn a blank on that.
Well, not only the ferry, you've got to realise it's a bit like 9/11 really. If you notice, I mean, one of the things that intrigues me about 9/11, just going off subject, but what does intrigue me is that at any one time, and it's the same as the Aurora shooting and now the Sandy Hook, they never come up with CCTV footage. Yeah. And yet, really, if you try to get through that London Underground station without buying your ticket, you'll be caught on about 20 cameras. And they'd use that as evidence in court.
In good definition.
In good definition, exactly. So that's exactly what it is. And this is what I'm saying. Again, Sabina and her sister have supposedly been to all the major places where CCTV cameras are saturated, and yet nothing can be produced, or no witnesses have said they've seen them at the ferries, either in Ireland or in England, on the coach. It says witnesses see him on the coach. No one's ever come forward in almost so many years now. It's 5 years almost. Okay. No witness has ever come forward and said, I drove them, I was on the coach, I was on... No one.
So the official story says they came from Dublin on a ferry. There's no evidence of that you've managed to find. So before they get to Liverpool, because you've got them in Liverpool, I think, you're not really sure where they came from. Now, in Liverpool, which this bit was not reported in the BBC documentary, they walk into a police station and express concern over Sabina's children. Exactly. Just tell us about that, David.
Well, first let me just quickly say, we looked at all the ferry times, the companies, etc. Now, accordingly, they're down in the south of Cork. They've then come from there, they've had to go to Dublin to get the ferry across. Now, we've always been led to believe that was London bound. For one, if you come from Ireland, which I've done the journey enough time, my family's Irish, always goes to Holyhead. You don't go all the way up and add another 200 miles on your journey and hours involved. You go downwards. So if they was, so that just comes that theory, says that's a load of rubbish. And that, therefore, they couldn't get a passenger. They couldn't become a foot passenger. The ferry doesn't run from Dublin. You have to get a car, and as you know, security involves you have to be the name driver. You have to pay by credit card. The terrorism bombings between IRA and mainland, the security is very strict. You might not see it, but they're watching you. You know, it's there every angle. They're very cautious, who's in and out of the country. So,
and they supposedly only had one passport between them as well.
In fact, it was only Ursula who had a passport. Sabina didn't have one. Ursula's passport was found on Sabina once she threw herself off the motorway the second time onto the A50. The police found the passport then, but they found it earlier when they was on M6. So all I'm just trying to say is that going back to Liverpool, this is it. So all of a sudden, there's no way that I can. The official story, they made this journey from Cork. It didn't happen in my eyes because it's impossible. They would have had to have gone to Northern Ireland, if anything, and then you could get a foot passenger across. But it takes hours longer. Would have put all the time sequence out events. So anyway, go back to what you said.
Yeah. So something which wasn't mentioned in the BBC documentary is that they went a few hours before they got on the bus to a police station in Liverpool. That's what I'm saying. So where did you get that information from, David? Is that FOI?
No. So what happened was, who first told me was the Hollinsheds themselves. It was John Hollinshead, one of the brothers of Glen, who I had to get there. Who I had to get permission from to represent them.
And you've had extensive contact with the Hollinshead, and that's all in the book.
Yeah. So they mentioned that the police family liaison officer at the time had said the girls had gone into Liverpool station police, and they've been recorded on CCTV. And a weird thing I just put in for the moment, whilst they was in the reception area waiting, a fella walked in with a high-vis jacket on. Ursula freaked out and jumped up onto the counter. She sort of really freaked out at the sight of this high-vis jacket. They realised that she was reacting to him, told the bloke to leave. Apparently he wasn't a police officer, he was like a builder or something. I don't know, this is only, hearsay of what's been said up there. But that was just pointed out. Paul Hollinshead told me that, the other brother. So I thought, well, that's a bit. It's just an intriguing thing to pick up about the high-vis jacket and the way she reacted. Cut long story short, there they are. They've gone into St Anne's police station at 8:40 in the morning. Very quite irate, a bit hysterical. reporting that her children, Sabina's meaning, had been kidnapped. So, God, you know, an accusation as strong as that as yet was never mentioned by the police in the official story or the documentary. So you think, well, that cannot be true. So I had to then, after contacting the Liverpool, you know, the chief inspectors and whatever one and their professional standard departments, they agreed that Liverpool Mersey Police furnished me with the log. The log.
Yeah. So you had it confirmed from the police log that they had in fact walked into a police station the day this event happened, a few hours beforehand.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were, to me, it sounded as if perhaps it was some kind of custody thing. Like there was a partner not letting the Sabina have access to her children.
Yeah.
The kidnapping is possibly maybe an exaggeration.
Yes, it could
but
be.
People do that when they report things to the police so that they'll take action. But she was concerned about the children who were allegedly in Ireland.
Yeah.
But you're not convinced they even travelled from Ireland.
No.
So there's a bit of mystery over where they came from and whether her children had been kidnapped. So she's telling this story. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and obviously, people have, in your book, there is appendices on both mind control and super soldiers. And I'm of the mind that there's possibly a bit of mind control going on here. I mean, you mentioned this high-vis jacket thing. That's possibly a trigger. I don't know.
No,
to some program that's.
Why I mention that is because if Ursula reacted like that in the station, which we were unaware of, it goes then. They reacted similar once on the hard shoulder, high-vis jackets viewing them. Yeah. And then the same thing happened again up on the A50 before she jumped off the bridge with a paramedic being in her high-vis as well and trying to negotiate with her. Yeah. So you know, I'm open to letting let the reader and the viewer come to their own conclusion in a sense, because it's a patchwork quilt. So I filled in, I would say, 85% of all the patches, but there is a good 15% that still needs to come about that can only be revealed if the court bundle police have got. We'll come on to that. Now, so this was not mentioned at all in the BBC documentary that these women had been into this police station. So it's incredible. It's bad journalism in my view. How come the BBC didn't find that out? Why didn't they report it? Surely it was significant. And you said that in the BBC documentary, the police made certain statements in that documentary, which they wouldn't have made if the Liverpool story was true. Just you've mentioned that in your. Yes. I'm not very explaining that very well. Just explain that for us, David. Well, because for instance, you've got P.C. Elliott, which is one of the chaps in the BBC film. He was a bearded chap. He's the one that allegedly had rung up Ireland to speak to Sabina's partner. Now, he'd meant to have been done this in the evening after the sister had run out on into the motorway. Ursula was already in intensive care, but now, as you know, Sabina was released only after 5 hours, so she was in police custody while this P.C. Elliott was allegedly on the phone to Sabina's partner.
And that was screened.
And that was screened. Well, that's a total lie. That's a complete invention then, because how can they say, and they say it clearly on the film, the partner was surprised he didn't even know she'd left. Right. Where he should be saying, well, look, Mr. Elliott, you're the second police force that's got onto me. I had Liverpool contact me this morning. The Garda have been round to the house and I've spoke to him. Right. So it's not no surprise.
So you think that whole scene was possibly fabricated by the BBC crew?
Not by the crew, by the police.
Or stroke police.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and because it's the police saying it. And you also go back to then DC Garrett, Dave Garrett, the DCI. He also turns around and says, we have he says on the film, so you've got Elliott, I would say allegedly, lying, and DC Garrett as well, because DC Garrett turns around and says, at no time did we have any idea why they were in the UK. Or why they were going to London. They want you to believe they was going to London because it's all because on a London-bound coach. But what I'm saying is, he's lying, because he would say, well, to tell the truth, 5 hours earlier, the sisters had gone in and reported their children been kidnapped. Her kids been kidnapped. That's what. Why? So what I'm saying is, when factual things such as that are taken out of the story. That is the indicator that the oboe, there's something there to hide then, that's, that's the beginning.
So let's just bring that in now and there before we go to the break. This term oboe, it means some person who's under observation for whatever reason by, not PC plod, by some covert specialist group
Yeah.
that's perhaps observing them for drugs or perhaps another reason.
Exactly. Obo goes on every day of the week. They're normally, there's mostly half a dozen running in London at the moment. They run into millions of pounds. They can go on for years and months. They're either for armed robberies, you know, people into terrorism, all sorts of people. Well, anyway, and they're not
drug
just
trafficking.
Drug trafficking is the main one. So,
Yeah.
but the main thing is, so that's the police who normally deal with them.
Yeah.
But apart from that, as you know, our police work with all security agencies, Interpol,
Yeah.
Europol. We've got the FBI, you know, CIA. They all work, you know, under an umbrella organisation, and so. All kinds of people are under Obo.
Right, and there are other reasons which we'll come on to as to why these women didn't seem to be treated just as two normal members of the public. That there was maybe a flag against their names for some reason to be treated specially.
Well, I would just quickly. This is one instance. When I was under Obo, which I personally was involved for something, I was involved with quite serious crime, which I mentioned in other books and that when I've written. But just for instance, you know, I'm a teetotal now, you know, but what I'm saying is when I was a younger lad, I did drink a little bit heavier. I drank for England at certain times, and, you know, a bit of a, you know, a young lad who done where to do, East End of London. Anyway, cut long story short, it's about 3:30 in the morning. I was going home. I was over the limit and really ashamed of it, you know, because I don't agree with it at all, but I was over the limit, and I was... I would have I would have failed any breathalyzer, put it that way. I was stopped by the police about 3 in the morning. We say, got out, they've done a name check, give me the bag, I blew it, it almost melted. You know, I'm proud again, but I'm just saying, I knew I was banging trouble.
Right.
I knew I was being arrested, there's nobody could let me go. They've done a name check, and then, literally, I mean, the policeman said, it's your lucky day, son, give him the key back, and drove away.
Right.
Now, I was in the middle of this road thinking, how can you leave me in this state? Don't let me get back in that car. It's my own car, but they left me.
Right.
It weren't until about 2 months later I'd realised Scotland Yard had me under Obo.
Right.
So when they'd done the check on me, I was caught banging to rights. The officers was going to arrest me, but they went, this fella, Dave McCann, registration number, he's under Obo.
And we don't need to go into why David was under Obo. You know, obviously you were involved in something. You recognised this part of the story as the fact that they might have been treated specially because they're under observation. Yeah,
that's what I mean. When you get, I've had it to myself, you know, you get this treatment, you know, for instance, I have a tape. This has never been said. I have a tape, hidden tape. I had a concealed tape where I had a conversation like this, but you was a police officer, would say. The police officer turned around to me wanting to frame certain people, said, don't worry, David, if no one has touched anything, because we can put fingerprints on something they've never touched before.
Really?
Now I've got this on film, okay, on a microphone. It's called my get out of jail free tape, because that saved me from getting a 10-12 stretch. They could not let my case go to court. The reason by the Birmingham 6, the Guildford 4 and Danny McNee, who got done for the Hyde Park bombing, were all appealing for fingerprint evidence had been planted. And their appeals were going on while I was in police custody with this tape.
All right.
I was given a gagging silence order to sign for 3 years. I couldn't talk to no media, couldn't talk to anyone, write a book for 3 years.
Really?
That's why I believe Sabina's in a similar situation. You get to sign it. I had to sign my case in the judging chambers. Privately comes in, hello David, the judge, you have this, it's in camera. My case was held in camera, and the prosecution turned around and say, in regards to Mr. McCann and his partner, we non-prosecute, we don't want to prosecute any further, and I was given immunity.
Okay. All right, David. Well, we'll be talking more about a madness shared by two after this break.